enraged. He's enraged. I'm enraged. Oh, my advice to parents, never read a word that any of your children say about you or write about you. My son, William Butler Yeats, on his way and probably at the moment the greatest poet that Ireland has ever produced, has just started to write his autobiography. 4 years, our time in Bedford Park. I've just received the proofs, well, a couple of hours ago. I'm still boiling with it. I've been reading through it, and I came to the bit where he talks about his family. He talks about my enraged family. God. And he's blaming me. He must be blaming me. We were too damn busy to be enraged. Well, Lily was working all in the house that got sent to with May Morrison. Oh, Lolly was out painting and writing of books, and Jack was drawing. What? I don't know what to do about this. I can't let this stand. Bear with me, I must get my head together on this. This is such an unfair thing to say. It's cut me to the quick. I can't do anything. I don't know whether to sit down or stand up, to go out or stay at home. I haven't been able to paint even. Look, I do I paint my self-portrait, looking in the mirror and doing that. I can't even look myself in the face. I'm sure he's telling the truth, although it has been said that autobiographies often contain a lot of fiction. Some of them are complete works of fiction. It couldn't be a misprint. No, it's in the sense of the whole paragraph. Oh, I don't know what to do. I must answer it. I must rebut it. I must prevent him putting it in the final thing. Otherwise, everyone would think I'm a monster of some sort. I'm sure he's telling the truth. He's not a liar. I don't know what to do. I remember, I'm talking about, 50 years ago or more, when I was a lawyer, we were preparing a case. If we were the defense, in our preparation, we would role play the prosecution to make the best possible case that they possibly could as preparation for us in rebutting, and for the other way around, vice versa. I don't know whether I could stand that. I wonder if I still got it. I know the place is a mess, but I'm generally able to lay my hands on what I need at any. Give me a moment. I'll see what I've got. There we are. Oh, well that. Oh, gosh, it feels strange after all these years. Oh, they're a bit dusty. Oh, I don't know how to get into these things. One arm, yes, right arm, right sleeve, there, left arm on the other. Oh, I know it isn't funny, but just doing something takes my mind off what he said. I'm going to have to play the prosecution, prosecute myself, John Butler Yeats, against the charge. Ladies and gentlemen, can you please excuse me while I reorient myself into the circumstances that I find myself in? As a barrister, I'm used to practicing in courtrooms and chambers where there's wood paneling and it's clean, and there's hierarchy and there's discipline, and authority is respected and justice is meted out. And here we have an unmade bed in the corner with some empty wine bottles beside it. And over here, there's a half-finished portrait by the window, which has seen better days. A newspaper and a carpet that's stained, and the whole place reeks of stale cigar smoke and alcohol. I will do my best to compose myself and undertake the business in hand. Ladies and gentlemen, our purpose here today is to evaluate the worth of John Butler Yeats, the father of William Butler Yeats. Now, I will lay in evidence before you details of his life, which will show you as a husband, as a father, as a man, that he has been irresponsible beyond belief, that he has been careless, not carefree, but rather careless in his decisions that he has made and the effect they've had on other people. I am sure when I've presented the evidence, you will believe me, you will agree with me on the verdict. So, if you're ready, we will start. At the beginning, the year is 1839. The country is County Down in Ireland, the island of Ireland. It is the Church of Ireland rectory of the Reverend William Butler Yeats and his good wife, and they have just received a gift, as they say, from heaven, a little boy. The first live birth they've had. They've had two girls who died at infancy. So they are absolutely delighted. They're blessing God and thanking God and raining love and affection on this child. And this is a family which is well placed. The father was actually born in Dublin Castle. Now, Dublin Castle is the epicenter of English rule in Ireland. And the grandfather is now an official there, a senior official in Dublin Castle. So these are a family that they dine with the Wilds and the Butts and they, the creme de la creme. So I am just painting the picture when you got there of this child. The auspices for this child were so great. The love and affection that was bestowed on him, the position that his parents had within society, and the likelihood of a wonderful, wonderful career. And it's come to this. The young boy was sent to fee-paying private boarding schools, something that John Butler Yeats never provided for any of his children. The first one was run by what were they called? The Davenport sisters. They were not religious sisters, they were maiden aunts, 3 maiden aunts, and they believed in muscular Christianity. John was whipped for climbing a tree on the first day there with another mate of his. They were always to sleep with a copy of the Bible under their pillow. And then when he went on to secondary school, he was in Athol Academy in the Isle of Man, which was run by Walter, what's his name? Anyway, Walter something or other, M.A. He was a Scots, not Presbyterian, but a Calvinist, And he always carried a rod around. Forrester was there. He carried a rod around with him. And he would whack any child. If ever he saw anything that felt like fun, amusement, good times, or general pleasantry, he would punish it. John records that in his school days, he remembers all his punishments came as a complete surprise to him. Probably because he was doing something which he thoroughly enjoyed. He got his punishment and then he said, within a couple of minutes, I was doing it again anyway, why not? So you see right at the beginning, here we have a disrespect for authority. And then he goes to Trinity. Now I must explain. The Church of Ireland is to the Church of England as Trinity College Dublin is to Oxford and Cambridge. It is the establishment, the quintessence of the establishment. And he was bound to go to Trinity. His father had gone to Trinity, his grandfather had gone to Trinity, most of his uncles had been Trinity men. And what did he do there? Well, he just, I've left out one thing that happened, one impression that was made on him at school, was he had a fixation about a fellow called George Pollexfen from Sligo. Pollexfen was a strange man. There were two brothers there, and George was the older one. And John described him as having a magnificent negative attraction, a magnetism. He was almost, he said, animalistic. They didn't communicate very much. He was very dour, but the boys kept out of his way, apart from John, who was really attracted to this George. He said it was so much different from how I was and how anybody else I had met in my family was, that I was attracted. I was really attracted. We'll come back to that a little later on. So at Trinity, he just had a good time. He managed to get an unclassified degree, which is literally like a certificate of attendance. You turned up. In fact, he didn't turn up for one of his exams. He had a fit of probably funk and didn't turn up. He did, however, win a prize. He won the prize of political science, I think it was. Because it turned, he went into the examination room where he was to be asked questions, and the only person there was the professor. He was the only entrant. So he got the prize. £10, the first thing he had earned, and the last thing he would earn for several years after that. £10. That was a lot of money in those times. Now, a prudent child would go, well, I'm talking about boy at university. Yeah, just graduated, if you'd call it graduation to get an unclassified degree. But he would put that in a deposit or in a post office savings account or something like that. But no, none of that for him. He blew it all on a holiday to Sligo to meet this friend of his who he was attracted to, but it was not reciprocated. George Pollexfen could barely remember him when he introduced himself. But anyway, he went to Sligo, and the faithful thing that happened there was he met Susan Mary Pollexfen. That is George's younger sister, 2 years younger. And if the Pollexfens were dour, and they were dour, and quiet, she was the quintessential of Pollexism, if it is an ism. And he was attracted to her because she was very pretty, and she had one blue eye and one green eye. No, one blue eye, one brown eye. That was it. But she admitted her faults to him, and he said, I like your faults, because I've got the quote here. He actually said, he admitted one time, where was he? Yeah, he said, the Pollexfen family's genius for being dismal was just what I needed. Just what he needed. He's thinking about getting married, and this is what he's thinking, what he's saying. Indeed, it was because of him, i.e. George Pollexfen, that I took to them and married my wife. Married my wife. I thought I would place myself under prison rule and learn all the virtues. He believed he wanted to get some balance in his life. He ultimately felt that life was so good that he needed some sort of constraint on him. So he was prepared to put himself in prison. Literally. He didn't tell any of this to his wife, his future wife, his potential wife. And he also talked, and there's records of him talking about the conjunction of the Yeatses with the Pollexfens, that it would be a wonderful thing. And he felt that there was a strong voice within the Pollexfens which needed to be released. He said, I will give a voice to the Pollexfens' cliffs. That's how he spoke about it. It was as if he was talking about a bizarre breeding experiment. And his wife was to be the one on whom the experiment was to be done. No love or affection there. So you can see the picture that I'm painting of dedication, certainly, but not to the task in hand or the task that was presented to other people. And poor Susan Pollexfen. They went on honeymoon to Galway, and John contracted diphtheria. He nearly died. Perhaps it would have been better if he had died. It would have been better for Mrs. Pollock, Mrs. Yates as she was then, because it would have saved her a short life of misery, which she did endure under this man. But anyway, he was recovered by a young doctor in Galway and returned to good health. Right. He studied the law. He decided to take up the law because this was part of the discipline. We talked about being in the prison. He took up the law, learned that, be good at it. His only qualification for the law that he had a persuasive manner. He certainly persuaded Susan to marry him because they became engaged within 2 days of knowing him, and so that was all he had. But he had no application for doing the day-to-day work of law. He would rather have his sketch pad than his notepad. And when he was in court, he would be sketching cartoons, really awful caricatures of his colleagues, of his senior people, of the jurymen, of the judges. I think it was the Fitzsimon case. It was about a contested will, and he was there away going and did a really awful cartoon of the man who was putting a case for one of the advocates, one of the sides, and it was passed to him by his colleague. So he took his glasses out, thinking that he begged a pardon of the 4 judges. I just need to think of believing that it was a question of law. So he looked at it, and he saw himself, and he uttered such a roar of disgust. Everybody around saw what was happening and knew what was happening, and there was laughter throughout the courtroom. Even the sober judges saw it and laughed. What that has done, what this man had done, is literally put his career down the toilet as surely as if he'd pulled the chain on it himself. Because from then on, his card was marked. He had no future in the law. He had anyway decided that he was going to take up art. He actually had a dinner with some of his colleagues, 4 of his colleagues, and he remained, in his old age, he said afterwards that, of the 5 of us, 4 become Supreme Court justices, 1 a chancellor. But none of them has lived as long as him, I believe, but that's another matter. But they had distinguished careers. So so that was his when he decided, he had told his lawyer colleagues. He told his colleagues that before he told his wife, and he told his wife, and she was distressed about it. He said, "It's all right. You take." By then they had 2 young babies, young Willie and the one that was named after his wife Susan, but they called her Lily not to confuse her with Susan. Anyway, he said, "I'll park you with your in-laws in Sligo. You love Sligo, you'll be there, that's fine. And I'm going off and I'm going to enroll at the art school, the Heathersley School of Fine Art in London." He did. He went off and had the life of an artist. Now you can see what's happening here. A decision which had a profound effect on his wife and his 2 children, as they were then, and no consideration whatever for the effect. It was all about him and his willfulness. And now I put in when he was at the art school, he did on one occasion got a commission for £100. A client said, I want you to do a portrait of me for £100. And because John knew him, he said, no, I can't possibly charge you that amount. The client said, "Are you mad? Do you not understand the basic rules of business? I'm buying something, I want to buy it at the lowest possible price. You are selling something, you must sell it at the highest possible price. You'll never make any money that way." And sure enough, he never did make much money. Not on that particular one or on any one after that.
Yeah.
Now I rely on Lottie's diary. Sorry, Lollie's diary for some of these things. He was saying that when they were there was always a shortage of money, shortage of food. There was an occasion when the Todd Hunters, good friends of himself, came to tea. And the young, immature and obviously sensitive William Butler Yeats had to borrow 3 shillings from Mr. Todhunter so he could nip out and buy bread, butter, tea and marmalade so that the Todhunters could, dine at their own expense at the Yeats household. There were other occasions when he borrowed, the father borrowed 6 eggs from Mrs. Dash so that each would have a boiled egg, because that was the first time in a year that they'd had a boiled egg. So they had to walk. They couldn't have money for food. They weren't sent to private schools. They went to the local schools. They didn't go to our college. But he was constantly borrowing from his neighbours and his friends. And you can see what we've got here. A person who is completely detached from the effects of their decisions. A person who is untrustworthy. He tried always to pay his debts back, and I think to the best of his ability he probably did. But he was always in debt. And as soon as he received any money, it was being spent. Actually, Willie got some money from an article or a poem he had submitted, and there was a tax demand, and Lottie had to pay the tax man from Willie's earnings. So, poor Susan at that stage, she had already had a stroke. She had a stroke when she was still in her 40s. She had a number of strokes, and she withdrew even further. She had become a ghost in her dining room and sitting room. Never engaged in conversation. The only thing she did was read. Sometimes she'd tell the children stories when they were younger, but that faded away. And she was confined to her bed most of the time. She had a number of strokes and died still in her 50s. So what are these? These are the results that you can see that as a provider, as a husband, he was careless, he was worthless, he was unspeakably unreliable. As a father, he was totally worthless. As a man, he was quintessentially worthless. There, I rest my case. Glad to be up to that. Well, that's quite a charge sheet. I wonder whether I should have kept on at the law. I'm good at making a case against myself. I know he's quoted there, and he's quoted from the diaries and events and stuff, and I can't deny that those things are true, that they might be correct, but it's not true. It doesn't feel right, it doesn't seem right. I don't know how to go about this. That's not the sort of person I remember myself being. It's not the sort of family that I remember, this enragement. They were wonderful. I'll tell you what I'd done. I'd undertaken their education. I don't know how to respond. I really don't know what to do. I think perhaps all I should do is kind of begin at the beginning and say what it was like. Start with my childhood. And it was idyllic. I still remember those first years. The sun seemed to shine all the time. I was bathed in love. And then suddenly the shadow came of school. And it wasn't that I didn't like discipline. I hated hypocrisy. And and yet was fascinated by the darkness of the Pollocksons, because they were tough. Nobody messed with them. At university, I did have a good time. I spent most of my time talking with artists. It was suggested, since I'd come from a long line of rectors, that I might take holy orders. When I suggested that my atheism might be a bar to such a career, I was reassured that would not be the case. I could not take holy orders. So I didn't. I studied the classics and a little, and I kind of got through. I was all right. But I was sketching all the time and meeting artists and talking to artists. And my marriage, he says about my marriage, I don't see it in that way at all. I mean, I thought that I was very attracted to politics, and I was very attracted to Susan, and I thought we would help each other. I could bring her out of her drawn backness and help her enjoy the art. I didn't realize that she absolutely hated the arts, and then he taught her the arts. And the more that I tried, the worse it became, and the more it became obvious, the less that I prospered as an artist, the more she felt she proved herself right. And she retreated completely from our family life, and either stayed in her room or was just a ghost around the tables. And my poor children, I mean, they had to not only fend for themselves, but look after her. You know, it was a complete reversal of the parenting situation, and I understood and I knew my position in that, and I take that point. But the point is, first of all, I'm a Celt and enamoured of beauty, but very keen and willing and wishful and lacking in concentration, and therefore fundamentally ineffective. And I'm an artist, and people must understand about artists. I mean, the artist is a solitary profession. You have to be a hermit. It was talked about they are world makers and world forsakers. We have to forsake the world. Sometimes it may be argued that artists should never get married, but certainly what an artist has to do is to cut himself off for anything other than his art and his inspiration. And that makes him look and seem like a selfish, self-centered cad to other people, particularly people who are in a different line of business, like businessmen or scientists. They regard us as ephemeral and effeminate and of no substance whatever, and of no use whatever. Until, as Shelley says, as they say, the poets are the unacknowledged legislators of the world, that when it comes to defining the times, they sometimes look to artists. But day to day, they don't. Well, let me tell you what my family were doing. Lily had studied and perfected her embroidery stuff with May Morris, the daughter of William Morris. And while William Morris was a great socialist, May Morris was a very poor employer. She was really not nice. I mean, although Lily loved the work, she hated the atmosphere there. It was very, very oppressive. She stuck it for about 6.5 years. After her first week, we thought that May was just doing it as a favour to us to occupy Lily in one way. But she came home with 10 shillings. It was a field day in the house because 10 shillings was the most money we'd seen in one place for several weeks. And she got 10 shillings a week. It went up to 30 shillings a week, but it was still oppressive to her. And eventually she gave it up, and she said after that every day was a holiday. But she put it to good use. They founded an organisation called Donemar, where they did embroidery for lots of churches and all sorts of beautiful artwork. And what Lolly was doing as well as painting, she wrote books on poetry. Between the two of them, they were the breadwinners. They were still in their teens, and they were earning good money. Well, not good money, not the sort of money that I should have earned or could have earned. And she learned how to print, techniques of printing. So when they came to do the press, she was wonderful at that. And you know, Koala Press, they produced some masterpieces. They were ahead of themselves in a number of ways. First of all, it was an entirely female organisation. Even the management was female. There were up to 20 girls and young women at one time. And they produced works of art. And unlike most of the arts and crafts, when they printed books, they often were about Guinevere and Sir Lancelot and the Knights of Old and Mort Arthur and all that. What they were printing at Koala Press was new work, most of it, a lot of it, from Willie himself. And these were works of art in themselves and have become collector's items. So they were doing terrific artistic work. And Jack, although smaller than the rest of them, he was a great artist, great at drawing, and he did hundreds of drawings for the Kuala Press. So there was a lot of art there, because I had undertaken their education. Every dinner table, we would discuss art, and we would discuss politics and everything. Unfortunately, Susan never took any part in this, but the others did, and my friends did. I was part of the comment debating group that went around to each other's houses, so they had this environment, and they were enthused by it. And Willie, I mean, I said to Willie, look, you're always away with the fairies. I mean, he was into spiritualism in a way that I didn't approve at all, and he very seldom spoke to me about it. But Maud Gonne came to see us, and she's in this 4 years book as well. She came to see us, and it had an impression on all of us. She came allegedly to see me, but in fact, she spent most of her time talking to Willie. She was there for nearly 35 minutes, and the thing that really impressed Lolly and Lily was that she kept the carriage waiting outside for 35 minutes. Such extravagance! You know, that would have fed us for a fortnight. But I've never painted Maud Gonne. Now, I've made it a plan and a question never to paint anybody I didn't like, which I recognise is not a very effective business plan. A lot of your clients you won't necessarily know. And when I have them sitting, then I get to know them. And if I don't like them, I don't paint them, and I tell them so. And also I talk too much, and they talk too much, and I ended up not doing it. But if I get to like them, I am tempted not to charge them the full amount, because I can do no other. This is the way I am. So anyway, that was how it was, and I was always onto William Butler to get away from the fairies and the Twilight Zone and the not Twilight Zone, the Celtic Twilight and all that sort of twiddling, and to look at what was concrete and what was around us now. I said the times are demanding a poet, and I was hoping that he would be the poet of that times. But when he met Maud Gonne, he fell totally and absolutely in love with her, completely unrequited. She had her other already having an affair, and she had children and all that malarkey, and we never talked much about Maud Gonne in the family, but the impression, the impact that it had on William Butler Yeats was phenomenal. It was profound. I mean, I think she said to him at one point, she said, "You complain about, my lack of response to you, but if I had let you have my way with me, think of all the poems you wouldn't have written." And it's also been said of William Butler Yeats. Well, I think Skeffington, he said Butler Yeats has a strong streak of pessimism in his personality, and it's something that has held him in good stead because it's helped him survive brief moments of joy in his life. Now, I hope I wasn't to blame for that dourness, and maybe some of that is the Pollexford's dourness coming out in Willie. But he did write this poem about the wandering Aegis, and at the time I thought, oh, it's just frippery, it's just nonsense. But as I grow older, I see myself in it. It's all about loss and longing and unfulfillment. And I went out to the hazel wood and plucked a hazel wand and stripped it, and pinned a berry to a thread. And when white moths were on the wing, and moth-like stars were flickering out, I dropped the berry in a stream, and caught a little silver trout. When I laid the trout upon the floor, I went to blow the fire aflame, but something rustled on the floor, and someone called me by my name. had become a glimmering girl with apple blossom in her hair, who called me by my name and ran and vanished through the brightening air. Though I am old with wandering through hollow lands and hilly lands, I will find out where she has gone, and kiss her lips and take her hands, and walk among tall dappled grass, and pluck till time and times are done the silver apples of the moon, the golden apples of the sun. I thought it was wonderful, but I kept saying to him, it's not concrete, it's not about the here and now. What about life? You know, what about the politics that's going on? You're looking for dead heroes. Lily kept me in touch with what was going on in Dublin, the rising of 1916, and how futile what they did. It was futile, it was foolish, the height of folly. And they were led away when they had to surrender within a week, having declared an Irish Republic and occupied several buildings in the capital. They were led away to prison, and the English did the reasonable thing, what they thought was the reasonable thing: quick trial and execution of the leaders. It turned out the reasonable thing was absolutely the wrong thing, because they made martyrs of them. Had they let them rot in jail, they would probably have, they were laughed at, they were hissed and booed by the crowds when they surrendered. They would just have been laughed at and forgotten. But when their sacrifice was realized, do you know, that folly did more for the spirit of Irish independence and for the Irish manhood and womanhood than decades, if not centuries, of wisdom had done, and all the talk about home rule had done. People wanted independence. And William came up with what I think was the answer to that in Easter 1916. He said, "We know they dream their dream, enough to know they dreamed and are dead. And what if excess of love bewilder them till they die? I write it out in a verse. MacDonagh and MacBride, and Connolly and Pearse, now and in time to be, wherever green is worn, are changed utterly. A terrible beauty is born." This was it. It was like he had carved them in marble. Those words will live forever, and the acts, they were ennobling them. He was doing exactly what Shelley had said that poets could do. He was doing it. And then, of course, on top of that came an even more profound work, the Second Coming. Turning and turning in the widening gyre. The falcon cannot hear the falconer. Things fall apart. The centre cannot hold. Mere anarchy is loosed upon the world. The blood-dimmed tide is loose. And everywhere the ceremony of innocence is drowned. The best lack all conviction, while the worst are full of passionate intensity. Surely some revelation is at hand. Surely the Second Coming is at hand. The Second Coming. Hardly there are the words out, with a vast image of the Spiritus Mundi troubles my sight. Somewhere in sands of the desert, a shape, the body of a lion and the head of a man, a gaze blank and pitiless as the sun, is moving its slow thighs, while round about it reel shadows of the indignant desert birds. Then darkness drops again. And now I know the 20 centuries of stony sleep were vexed to nightmare by a rocking cradle. And what rough beast, its hour come round at last, slouches towards Bethlehem to be born. by God, it was magnificent. Magnificent is the only word for it. I couldn't, I felt, it was, he had come, the poet of the age had come, and it was my son. And I was absolutely never prouder of him than that. You see, the purpose of art is to make history recognizable to itself, and also to make the public recognize the present, and by definition take responsibility for it. It challenges us when we recognize the present and think, how did this come about? We are responsible for it. Even if we have done nothing, we are responsible for what is. Of my 4 children, all of them became, in my book, in my estimation, and I think in estimation of more people, and some of them are still on their way to doing that, but some of the finest artists that Ireland has produced. And I claim no small part in that. I rest my case. I think I might begin to paint again.
Oh, yes. Yes!
Slightly shorter than we had done in rehearsal because I might have missed some stuff out. We'll have a quick break, and I'll be happy to be in the chair for anyone who wants to stay for a Q&A, because I think he's a fascinating man. Yeah. And what we've got there is a real dilemma, and we haven't answered the dilemma. No. Was he feckless? Yes, yes. Was he irresponsible? Yes. But he had a calling that he thought was a higher call. Anyway, we can use it. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.